What's up, YouTube? Here with something a little off the wall, talking ice barriers today. The deck had came up a couple formats ago, and me and some people had fooled around with it. And the deck actually wasn't too bad, but of course it was just a sort of a fun thing by the wayside, and I haven't touched it in a long, long time. But one of the guys on the page that I admin, or one of the pages that I admin, posted up the challenge to make them competitive. And as he posted, I see my good friend Bus Fair. He's like, "Yeah, that's not going to happen." Unfortunately for him, he's completely wrong, and I knew such. So I posted up the old build that I had of the deck from back during Plant Synchro format, and we had this discussion about the deck and whatnot. And I decided I was going to do an update on it. So this is that update. Now, if you don't know how the deck works, you pretty much bait the graveyard full of ice barriers, and then they get recycled back to the field through various effects. And then you can build some fairly decent locks and such. So we start off with 2 Gantala. He's the boss of the deck. Every end phase you can special an ice barrier from your graveyard other than another copy of himself. So pretty busted right there. We play 3 one-ofs. Medium is pretty much Great Shogun for ice barriers, with the added effect of if they have +4 board advantage on you, you can just special her for whatever reason. 1 copy of Raiho. He's the effect negator. He kind of works like Fabled Unicorn in a sense. He doesn't negate activations, but when an effect is attempting to resolve, they have to discard a card to let that effect resolve. So that really freaks people out. Unfortunately, he's fairly easy to get over, but what really serves him well is the shock factor when he hits the board. Your opponent typically is going to look at Raiho and be like, "What the hell is that?" And then they read the effect and they're like, "Huh? My effects can act, when my effects resolve, then they get negated," and they get confused by the wording because it is old text. On top of the fact they see that they have to discard for stuff, and, they get flustered looking at Raiho because they don't understand it, or don't feel that they understand it completely. It usually puts them in a position where they play more conservatively than they should, and you're able to abuse that. And then we play 1 copy of Daisojo. As long as he's on board, our ice barriers are immune to spell and trap destruction. So that's pretty cool. The speed of the deck comes from Strategist. Excuse me. His effect, you pitch an ice barrier and get to draw again, so that's pretty awesome. By straight card advantage numbers, it's really a net 0. You pitch a card and draw a card, but with a deck like this that relies on the graveyard as such, pitching an ice barrier to draw again is in your favor anyways. So really the pitch itself is a plus, and then the draw again is a plus, in kind of a twisted sense of logic. So Strategist is phenomenal. The card that makes the deck playable, though, is Prior. Prior is pretty much Monster Reborn. If you have an Ice Barrier monster, you can special them from your hand, but that turn you can't special summon level 5 or higher monsters. But regardless, the thing you do with Prior, you normal Prior and then tribute it to revive Gantala, and then Gantala starts reviving things like Raiho and Daisojo and Medium during the end phase, and you start locking down your opponent's effects and destruction capabilities, and how many cards they can play in a turn, and it gets really annoying for the opponent, and it sets up a pretty awesome field for you. Another thing, if you don't have a graveyard that's baited well enough with any of our 3 one-ofs for Gantala to utilize, you can always use Prior, special Prior when you have another Ice Bearer on the board, pop it to get Strategist, since Strategist is only level 4, and then use Strategist to pitch and draw again, and help set you up for later turns as well. So Prior has the 2 uses depending on how your grave's looking and what you're able to do for the turn. 1 copy of Dance Princess. She's pretty much Giant Churnade. Reveal ice barriers, bounce spell and traps. 1 copy is definitely mandatory. You will rarely ever use the effect, though. She's just there because she's too good to not run, but not good enough to play multiples. 1 copy of Samurai. He's by far the worst and most useless ice barrier in the deck. But the point he comes into play with is similar to, like I said earlier, if you don't have a graveyard set up, with anything worthwhile for Gantala to revive Samurai, and then during your next turn, change him to defense mode. He destroys himself, and you get to draw again. So once you already have Raiho and Daisojo or Medium on the board, or maybe you have none of them, or maybe you don't have any copies of them in the graveyard, so you have nothing better to revive with Gantala, Gantala just starts bringing back Samurai, and you have a draw engine. So that's pretty cool. We play one copy of Defender. While he's on the board, anything with 1600 or higher can't declare attacks while you control another Ice Barrier along with himself. And Cryomancer, similar to Defender but level 4 and higher, cannot declare an attack. These two are also our tuners for the deck, so they give us a little bit of options. Finally, 2 copies of Valor and Gores, because the meta pretty much requires them. Dualities help us filter. Medallions are our emergency calls for Ice Barriers. You can even search the level 6s and 7s with this card. Foolish helps bait Graveyard. Surface allows us to abuse like a single copy of Prior. You know, like, damn, I don't have the Prior. Oh, I have Surface. I'll just Surface back Prior and then pop Prior for Gantala, and you're good to go from there. MSTs and Heavy for back row hate, and then pretty much staple with Dark Hole, Reborn, Book of Moon, and Mind Control. Traps are also fairly straightforward, all but the very last one, which is Bubble Bringer. It's kind of like a Gravity Bind, level 4 and higher can't attack directly, and then during your turn you can pop Bubble Bringer to revive 2 level 3 or lower water monsters with the same name. So late game, you can Bubble Bringer to bring back double Prior and just sort of pretty much go off from there. So that's pretty awesome. The extra decks are pretty much all straightforward. Gotchi, we have a bunch of 2s. We have a bunch of 4s, so you've got Staples, Cowboy, Maystroke, Black Corn, and Abyss Dweller. We're all waters, so Abyss Dweller will be 2200 at all times, which is always good. 1 copy of Strike Bouncer. We do play 2 level 6s, as well as being able to Synchro for 6. But the main reason of Strike Bouncer is because we have Mind Control and Monster Reborn. We can take our opponent's 6s. Usually if you have Raiho or Daisojo on the board, you want them on the board, so you're not wanting to exceed with, you know, our Ice Barriers. But in the case where you can Mind Control your opponent's, you know, something or another, and put a Strike Bouncer on the board, you're pretty much in good shape. Similarly is Big Eye. Between Gores, Medium, and both copies of Gantala, we have level 7s, and Big Eye's too good to not run. Pretty much staple synchros across the board: Armory Arm, Catastor, Gaia, Duloran, Gungear, Black Rose, Stardust, and Scrap Dragon. Key thing about Gantala, he brings back any Ice Barriers, so you can revive Duloran and Gungear with Gantala's effect. As for the sideboard, 3rd copy of Valor for things like windups, Inzectors, etc. A copy of Maxi, Inzectors, possibly Hieratic, etc. 1 copy of Aurorica, similar to why the Marlantian deck side copy is a single one. Our Priors are Aqua type, yeah, as well as our 2 tuners, so we have things to use for Aurorica to pop like a Macrocosmos or something. Thunder Kings just to help add a little bit of stun element to the deck if we need it, since we don't do any searching whatsoever in the deck aside from the dualities and medallions, but Thunder King really doesn't conflict. A 2nd copy of Raiho, because that effect negating ability is absolutely nuts, especially against effect reliant decks. I'll typically side out of Daisojo for the 2nd copy of Raiho against things like windups or Inzectors, things like that. The MVP of the side deck is Shock Troops for the Merlantian matchup. You can tribute it to destroy a water monster and then add an Ice Barrier. So you're like, summon Shock Troops, tribute, pop your Megalo, and I get to search. So that's nuts. 2 copies of System Down for Girgia, the Closed Forest, of course, for GK or Dark World. Targeting Destruction with Soul Taker, and extra back row hate depending on the matchup and what you feel is necessary. So I'm going to let you guys think about the deck. Like I said, it's fun when it goes off. It is nuts. I wouldn't say it's ridiculously competitive by any means, but I have beat every top, well, for as wide as this format is, top tier, whether it's Chaos Dragons, Inzectors, Windups, Heroes, Dark Worlds. I've beat every one of them with this build multiple times a piece. My win ratio is actually higher. Probably in about the 70% win rate ratio with this particular build. The surprise factor puts in a lot of work with it. So let me know what you guys think. Comment, rate, subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later. Peace out.